Hello, everyone. I think we're live on Facebook. Thanks for joining us. It's great to be here at the TCA in real life. I'm with artist Nikesha Breeze. Thanks for joining us tonight, Nikesha.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Thomas. I'm the executive director of the Paseo Project, and I'm curator of the Art and Activism film series that we are so grateful to the TCA for hosting virtually. The Art and Activism film series is a collection of 3 documentaries that you can stream safely from your home. These films combine the creative power of art to move us emotionally with the strategic work of activism that can change our society. It's actually been over a 3-month process of planning this, and I want to thank Chelsea and Colette, Elise and Jasmine for their help in getting us where we are today. It's always kind of navigating week by week in this strange environment, as you all can imagine. We also want to thank the National Endowment for Humanities for their support in this programming. So please check out all the films. You can go to the TCA website, tcataos.org. And today we just watched Aggie. In real life here at the TCA, and I'm excited to have Nikesha Breeze here and have a conversation about this film and just the greater theme of art and activism. And I'll just do a little background for Nikesha. Nikesha is an interdisciplinary artist working from an Afrocentric and Afrofuturist perspective. Their work reimagines the possibility of healing intergenerational traumatic inheritance through the intersection of art and ritual. Nikesha uses performance art, film, painting, textiles, sculpture, and site-specific engagement to build a counter-narrative of the otherwise, where Black bodies and ideas are seen as existing in hypervalue, a realm of invisibility between Black artistic aesthetic, Black time, and ritual healing. Originally from Portland, Oregon, Nikesha lives and works here in the high desert of New Mexico. In 2018, Nikesha completed a solo museum show of her work within the skin at the Harwood Museum of Taos, which I was there for, which was great. They've been awarded the national recognition at the 2018 International Art Prize exhibition, winning the juried 3D Grand Prize as well as the Contemporary Black Arts Award. And opening soon, I'm very excited for this show. Nikesha has their first large-scale solo show in Santa Fe at Form and Concept. The opening is April 30th, and there will be a durational performance piece as well as a reception that day. Congratulations on that. Thanks for being here. I know you are busy preparing for that amazing show. So we're going to have a little discussion, and we would love for you all to take part. We have Rita O'Connell monitoring the chat on Facebook. So please put in your comments, questions, and Rita.
I'll read them over the microphone. Colette says, thank you. And Deanna Rico says hi.
So this is fun.
Yeah,
okay, we're going to do this,
fun.
you guys. We're going to do this. So I kind of like prepared all these questions, but I feel like just diving in and just chatting with you about this. We just got out of the theater. It's a film. It's a documentary about Agnes Gunn, Aggie, who is a philanthropist. She is, she's incredible in what she's done, and her actions in the art world, inspiring. I think we all want an Aggie in our lives. How do you feel coming out of that film?
I loved it. I was really excited to get to know and get this portrait of Aggie. I'd heard her name, but really didn't know much about her work and her philanthropy and her incredibly, detailed, long career in the arts. I was really inspired by her humility and her eye, like just this being. And I love that it was made by her queer daughter, filmmaker, like how you can get that intimate portrait of this being, this person. I walked away really enlightened about who she is, and also brimming with thoughts around the relationship of philanthropy and social justice and art and all the topics. I'm really excited to dive in with you.
Yeah, it was really a tribute. It's sort of like this, and it was funny and behind the scenes and family photographs. And then, you just kept getting these voices in there, and it really hits you at the end where they really dive into the work that she has done in selling this big piece of artwork for $165 million and donating that to the Art for Justice Fund and the work they're doing. On a larger perspective, how do you see this intersection of art, race, justice, and how they intersect? So as they were talking about within this film.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, what we're really talking about is power, influence, money, and how those are flowing always through the world, and collecting themselves in, centers of privilege, and particularly, white privilege, which was very apparent in and how Aggie was able to give so much. Right. When we start talking about money and power and privilege and all of this work, and then, with art, like how, you can't really separate art from power, money, and privilege, really, in the art world. And that's very clear. And so what I loved about Aggie's perspective on this, or way of working it, is saying, yeah, okay, I have this capacity. Right. Like, how can I actually make real change? And how does art, the actual context of the art itself, the artists themselves and the work they're doing, how does that actually touch people in the real world, in the real ways? I loved, I loved seeing how this movie gave an opportunity not only for people who have a lot of wealth and privilege and power, a model for ways that they can use it to support real change, but also a way that even people who don't have a lot of money can see that even whatever they have, they can still translate into actionable ways.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if I answered the question. It's kind of such a broad question.
It is.
It's like all of these different pieces.
Right. Yeah. And I loved how, in many ways, to illustrate that too, is like, here we have a story of the daughter who is making a film about this. So we have the art of making the film, telling this story about a woman who was a collector of art, who sold a piece of art and made money and then she was influenced because she read this book and then watched 13th, the film, and was hugely influenced. Here again, art that influenced her actions, and then selling this art, and actually within the Justice Fund that she created is more about making art. And so it's sort of like, and there were so many great quotes, and I was it was in the dark and we were trying to write them down of there's being rich and having the generosity, and then there's being rich and doing it for the justice. And I'm totally badgering that quote, but I really thought that was powerful in a sense of really separating that out of, okay, yeah, you have money, what are you going to do with it? And then and how you actually transform that situation. I thought there's some great aspects and perspectives.
Yeah, I love that you brought that quote up, that there, and I think it was Ava DuVray's quote around, or maybe it was someone else's who said it, but either that place where there is really a difference. There really is a difference between the generosity based on, or philanthropy and generosity, and philanthropy and justice. And what I feel like that, like the subtle line in that is sort of maybe that white elephant in the room, the white savior complex, right. The white savior potential that can come in, where our generosity, or like people who have that privilege go ahead and want to, use it to help the poor, incarcerated people, rather than like actually showing up for those people, like knowing who those people are, seeing, like walking, like really, really walking the talk around it, where it's not just like, I'm going to help from my high tower because I have this privilege and I feel so bad and I'm so full of guilt or full of shame or full of, goodwill. It's like, it's so much more than that. And I think that that's what Aggie shows, is that you have to put your sort of skin in the game in a certain way when you really are talking about helping people, because that generosity, even though that is important and we need as many generous people as we can get, it only goes so far, truly. And what I see in this work and what Aggie is doing is breaking that mold of the white savior and saying, no, yes, I have all of this privilege, and and I'm going to show up at the prison, and I'm going to get to know these people and get to know these artists, and I'm going to, support living artists and BIPOC artists and queer artists, and know why. I'm going to, go and feed the babies, that are dying from AIDS. I'm going to like get totally in there, like my skin, my time, my tears, my, and all of that. At the same time, of course, she's still a wealthy woman, living her life with the means that she has. So it's, there's a balance, and and a thin line, and maybe not so thin. Maybe it's a really big gap between generosity and white saviorship and true philanthropy and allyship.
And that's one way to think about this film too. Could this be an invitation, an awakening, and like a reckoning to like, hey, you rich people out there too, here are ways. Here's an example. Here's someone who's leading the way. And actually, I think the movie kind of ended with that, of other donations of art and sales of art to fund social causes. I love that she started the studio in a school program, reaching millions of kids. And again, we, into the schools. And I particularly really enjoy her knowing the artist and working with living artists and like seeing their career through. I just think that's such an important thing for working living artists to have that help and exposure and support and getting out there. And I think versus, like they said, versus a collector buying the art and sticking it in storage to rack up its value. So
yeah.
We actually have a comment about exactly that. Johanna DeBiase is watching, and she says she watched a film last night that's on Netflix. Of course, we do want to encourage people this week to stay with the TCA and to stream the films that we have showing. But there is a film out called Made You Look, and Johanna says it's about art fraud, collectors who only buy art for investment and don't care about the art or hanging it in their homes. So.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just going to say, is that place where, these like interesting lines, like where capitalism comes in so much. And, again, power, money, influence, like when art is taken in that way and objectified and really capitalized on, becomes investment, that approach to art, I think, in so many ways goes against what art really is at all. And the Aggie's, focus, and other collectors who do the same, like focusing on living artists is really anti-capitalist, right? It's and how do we do that? Like, how do we work like collectors who obviously have a lot of money and they're supporting artists, and we want collectors to buy artists' work for a lot of money and support artists? How do we do that in a non-capitalist model, right? And that's the question, and I think that's what Aggie is doing when you really realize that a person isn't an investment, right? That a person, is a beautiful, growing, changing, force that we, I don't know, I think that like an artist is something to nourish, like a garden, right? Growing, to just for the fact of the growing, not necessarily the fruit. I don't know, I'm losing track, but it's this very interesting navigation between capitalism and art for art's sake, and for the power of art and what art is beyond its objectification.
Right. And I see that in terms of almost like labor, and like it's like a factory and production. And there's one perspective, probably a more capitalist and like collector version, is like the products coming out of it and how can I capitalize off of that, versus I think the perspective we saw with Aggie, which is the person, getting to know the person. And even more so, I loved her, saying, I don't necessarily even like the art, and I loved her perspectives on those things. And it's sort of like, she would be like, no, I walk out of the room, I don't like that sort of stuff. And I love that, because it's such a great reminder that there's a lot of different types of art out there. And yes, we use art in many different ways, in our homes, for entertainment, but in this film, we really begin to understand the importance of art as advocacy, as communicating and showing perspectives. And the reason I really want to talk to you too is because I feel like it ties really closely to your work. And I hope everyone checks out Nikesha's website and her work. But in the show, upcoming show, I wanted to talk a little bit about that and the power that art and performance and provocation, and that edge between this is enjoyable versus this is hard. This is hard to see. I mean, I know that you've confronted that.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on how art can be used for that, and in its many ways of how it can be even digested or understood?
Yeah, I mean, that is the thing. I mean, art is so, it's so complex, like you said. You know, there's so many ways that art is both produced and consumed, you know, by the world. It feels like, I mean, one of the things that I know, being an artist and also in navigating with artists and being, you know, and curating work myself and in this world, I mean, every single artist is so layered. They really are bringing, they're a whole being that is bringing so much to what they produce, right? And I think that, you know, the complexity of what ends up coming out of making, of the process of making, and the way that it comes into relationship with the world, you know, with that social body, is is the question, or is the line of art's effectiveness or art's ability, really, like its power. I think that my work in particular, you know, is really centered on that relationality, right? Like how art is touching you, like what is it actually doing? How is it shifting you? You know, in this movie, you know, Ava DuVray talks about, you know, in the making of 13th, you know, this piece, and when Aggie saw it, it changed something in her. Like it literally changed something in her cells. She had to act. There was no way not to act after experiencing that art, right? And there's something in that, you know, I also, in my work, I try to touch on that place that it creates, when art creates an imperative in you. When you see something and you're able to get past the scary part, right? You know, they talk about Aggie being like, I don't want to see that movie. I don't know if I want to see all the truth, even though I know the truth and I'm not denying the truth. I don't know if I actually want to see it in real life. Like that's really hard. You know, and so, you know, when in my pieces, you know, I'm showing, you know, 108 death masks, and I'm asking people to look at what could be, you know, the dead face of an ancestor, or, you know, looking at a painting of a lynching, or, you know, really understanding the layers of the complexities of our history and our violent history. You know, when I'm asking people to do that, I'm asking them to sort of come up to that wall of what is frightening, and then to break beyond it, to actually move past that into a place of vulnerability, because that vulnerability allows you to be penetrated, like actually allows you to be touched. And I feel like art that is able to break through that boundary and touch people and move people and to create an imperative in them is work that is again working in the social body, like can effect change. So art itself, through its ability to move you, is a form of social justice, because it's like literally shifting the cells and the response pattern in people. And then the ways that work then echoes out in actual actionable items and ways is important. I don't know if I answered the question. I just kind of talked about that.
Beautiful. Like, it was beautiful. Because in the very beginning of the film, you know, she said they talk about art as a way of communicating without words and through visual. And I think, well, I've always seen the power of art too, is that it's not, some of it, as far as like someone trying to tell you something or educate you something, in our traditional forms, it's like spoken to you, it's like taught, it's told to you. And there's something refreshing I find with art, at least in my perspective, is that there's more that pulls you in, that engages you, that touches you in a way that maybe gets around the part of your brain that's like, I don't want to be told, or I don't want to know anymore. I don't want to see that. And it kind of sneaks in, and it can touch you in a certain way that I think you're right, that just as you said, where when you leave that situation, you become changed, and you have felt something, and that whether that artist and that message in a new way. And to me, that's always been that's the power of art. And so, of course, translating that, it has to work within the work of justice. And specifically here, she talks a lot about mass incarceration.
And you know, one of the quotes that came back again in this too is that place where social action and activism must be like imaginative, that it really is about being creative. And I loved how even in the end of that, it came to that, young portrait of Aggie at the very end of the film, but talking about that, like what it is to be an artist. Like Aggie, her whole life has supported artists and art and this world of artistry. But what the picture of this film shows is that she really was the artist the whole time. Like, that her ability to see not only like the art itself, but the ways that art can actually creatively support these larger pieces, that she could do it differently, that she could come into an institution that has been dominated by white men, forever, and break it up and bring in, feminine voices and queer voices and Black and brown and indigenous and, all of these, people of color into not only the administration and the curation, but into, just every single aspect of it. This is a creative patterning. And so she, as an artist, was able to use money, power, and privilege, and her eye for both aesthetic and potential to really create, functional change. Yeah. Right. She actually functionally changed the way things worked in the art world. Yeah. And that is the greatest. That's a great artistry.
I love that. Yeah. That change. You have to have a vision and imagine and how to make the change.
And what tools? Like she had the vision, and then she has, I have money, I have privilege, I have power, I have influence, I have access. Like these are my paintbrushes, my medium, my canvases. Like, and then like the art that she made is this massive social body of support, of systems that continue on to radiate in time, just like any good art, should. Like it radiates through time, becomes essential.
Totally. Do we have any questions, Rita?
So far, we mostly just have really great comments. Marty Monroe wanted to highlight the quote from the film, "Without art, there is no empathy. Without empathy, there is no justice." Yeah. And so I think we'll bring that up on the screen here. But it looks like we have a question in the room.
Oh, hi, Chelsea.
Nikesha, I'm wondering if you have somebody in your life that is like Aggie, and if not, do you want somebody like
So for the folks at home, the question is, do you have somebody in your life who is like Aggie? And if not, would you want that?
Yes, I'm currently seeking an Aggie in my life. If there is an Aggie there,
please call.
Help wanted sign right on my chest. We all need it. Yeah, I don't, but I've always dreamed of that too. Like, and it's like, it's interesting. Someone like Aggie, I laugh, of course I would love, the support that Aggie, has been able to give to artists, and the vision and the eye and the faith, really. Yeah. Like, I think that's what it is that like having somebody who has faith in you and can actually see what you're trying to do and be able to, again, creatively find ways to support that process. Like that's what I feel like that Aggie is. And, and I definitely would love that. I think there's a lot of combination of people who have a lot of faith and support in, in holding a lot of my vision from multiple places. But yeah, all together and with a purse. Hey, sign me up. Right.
I mean, that was one of the things I highlighted in watching the film too, was the patronage, this idea of philanthropy, and what do artists need? What do artists want? And I really admired that, what the position she served in so many capacities, from schools to new, upcoming artists to supporting collections. Maybe there's a little bit we could talk about in terms of, and I love of how to support an artist, especially in this town where we have so many artists who struggle. It is an art colony, an art town. It has a history of creativity. I'm going to go on the edge here and say I feel like sometimes this town operates in a way where we're so scattered and separate that there hasn't really been a lot of us coming together or support on a closer scale. And I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about what that support could look like, not only within the arts community, but perhaps with the entire community. I can think of one thing as just, of course, everyone wants to show their work. So we're always grateful for the opportunities for shows and sharing the work. Money, of course, always a good thing. Do you hear of any or think other ideas? I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot with this, but how to really create a supportive art environment for our community and encouraging all of us in some way.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting thing. It comes back to our conversation around, just that conversation around capitalism and art, and how deeply invested in like how connected that it all is, where individual artists are often in feeling like that they basically like they have to do it all alone, like they have to become a famous artist to be able to make it. They have to make a lot of money either by figuring out a way to sell their art commercially, or they have to like build their image up to become famous. Or like there's this whole singularity, and that's I think the curse of the bigger picture of capitalism across our entire world. This idea that the individual is all, and that we have to each sort of forge our own path, and that's the American way, or but really the capitalistic way, and it completely, well, for one, it's false. It's a false pattern. It never actually works because of the massive truth of the disparity of capitalism that we don't ever actually make it that way. Like the money and power is already, weighted highly towards a very select few, and most of them are white men. And so the fallacy of the individual person being able to, in essence, become successful on that path is fake, and it's what actually keeps the rich rich. And so the work is a horizontal. Like we have to stop moving in the vertical as artists and as people, and start looking at horizontal patterns, looking at ways that we can work to help and support each other, and in these mutual, collective ways. That's where our power lies. We all talk about it all the time, that like strength in numbers, but we still, like when it comes down to our own individual ideas, we still have this idea that we have to make it alone, like that we still have to be personally successful, to be able to be successful. And I think that breaking that fallacy around art and making art is really important. It's not about, I think, artists, just jumping into that capitalistic model. I think the way that we support artists and artists support each other is to look at more mutually collaborative and beneficial horizontal structures. So, more cooperative art spaces, more, studio share spaces, getting, what happens when, many artists or philanthropists go in and create larger, art studio spaces, art making spaces, art material spaces, maker spaces for artists where there's, machines that they could be using for more fabrication. Like, I think that those types of things are really important. I think that our models that are not only creating access for artists to be able to be seen and shown in institutions, but also breaking those institutions up and creating more diversity in the administration of them. I think, any way we can look towards larger horizontal structures for artists in general, the better. Creating community, art, like the Vital Spaces just created a huge community art closet. Getting donations, you can go down and get, incredible art supplies. Me and two other artists, Rashan Ahmed and Tigre Bailando, founded the Earthseed Black Arts Alliance nonprofit this year, which our sole focus is gathering together artists and supporting each other with just even like weekly and bi-weekly hangouts, and like, how are you doing? How can we work together? How can we dream together? How can we talk about what projects you're working on? And then access, creating spaces, creating events, trying to do that lateral movement.
We're all stronger together.
We're all stronger together.
Right.
We literally are. We can create really powerful change when we start working together and move out of that capitalistic singularity vision. Even as we all individually have our work that we're developing, it only is stronger when it's supported by a bigger base.
No, I love that. And to me too is the conversations. Like, yes, I can meet with people for coffee and have great conversations, but I feel like creating more opportunities for that. And I know it's kind of an odd year because we've all been stuck at home, but in some ways the whole Zoom environment, I feel like, has reminded us of coming together and sharing in some ideas and thinking and translating that back hopefully into the real world, and gathering for conversations, talking about art, like talking about things like your artist statement and what's freaking you out. I don't know something. I need help with something. I need support. I feel like if we can break down exactly what you said, just like support each other on that level. And also, and I feel like just being okay with not knowing and asking for help and getting support, because you grow together, every person involved with that exchange, for sure.
Yep. Exactly.
Rita.
Gina Azari, I think, said something that's on a lot of our minds, which is, I want an hour in Aggie's apartment. That collection.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd love to hear you both reflect a little bit on the art that we just saw in that film, just the experience of being in MoMA for a minute after all this time we've spent away.
Yeah, I mean, I just loved it. It's inspiring. Yeah, I love it. I love seeing all of those artists and the art that, the beautiful and unique tastes of Aggie.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love who she chose to collect and why. And I don't know. What piece? I mean, there were so many amazing works.
Definitely so many works. But yeah, it was sort of a little tease at going to a museum or something and seeing all the different art.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a question as well from Marty for you, Nikesha. He asks, was there a moment or an event when you realized that your art could be an activist vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, it's really was very much the show at the Harwood Museum. I mean, Matt, you had that vision also to see my work when no one else, like literally I had just made these paintings on a bunch of doors from the Reese store and had them in my living room, slowly poisoning my children.
It's not how I would describe it, but yes.
But it was. And you saw that and gave me that opportunity. I mean, and we laughed about it, that I, in 2018, was the first African-American artist to ever be shown at the Harwood Museum in Taos. Have a solo show, not to be shown. There were other artists that were shown, but it's, something about having that work shown and like breaking through into a museum space with particular, and even the context of the work, which was so intense and powerful, and I was really afraid to bring a painting of a little boy facing a horde of KKK members. I was afraid to bring a painting of a lynching, or a woman that had been raped, like as into the and wondering like how people would respond. And I think that experience of being able to bring this work that it was so important to me and also so difficult for people to see, and to see that people showed up to it, like that they actually entered into the work and allowed it to touch them and to move them, gave me that confidence. I was like, wow, this is powerful. Like this is possible. Like it's actually possible to talk about these things and have people listen to it. And so I think that Marty, gave me that faith that what I said could be heard, and that I actually could go there, that I could go there and go further, and that I could actually bring my whole self to the table with my work, and that it had potential to move people. And I'm excited. I think it is and can. So yeah, continuing.
That's a great question. And yeah, it's interesting how those moments have. I'm remembering that exact. I remember we went to your house and saw the pieces in your studio, and it's exciting to see the work that you've continued on, the trajectory of that work. And it's like there are so many opportunities out there, and it's just having that door open to say, yeah, let's put it here. Let's share it. Let's give this. And when you think about this community, there's it could be limited because we are in a small town, but we do have places like the Harwood Museum. There are other museums, and I do feel like there is a responsibility for them to help us bring all of our voices up and to share and to give that clean white wall. I mean, Encore Gallery does a great job too, giving us that clean white wall to like to show like, this is what I can do and I want to share it. And here's the voice I have. So, yeah. Any other questions over there?
Yeah, this takes us back a step to a conversation we were having, but I think it's a question that both of you can speak to a degree. Colette says she was loving that conversation we were having about being a supportive artists community together. And she says, if we're working alone as artists or somewhat isolated, but want to work with others, what ideas do you have for us to find one another here and connect?
Yeah, it feels, I mean, of course, COVID makes everything a challenge, you know, in ways that we can connect to each other. There are definitely creative ways. Interestingly, I had a similar feeling. I had an idea that came up to me for an art piece that was really personal. I was working with, you know, some really deep layers of depression and mental, emotional, like anxiety, and really being like, I'm falling into that rut again. I kept saying it. I'm like, I'm falling into the rut. You know, the rut, like that place inside the brain where you drop in the hole and there's a hole there and it's dark. You know it. We all know it.
All know that.
And I was like, I need a tool to like get me out of this rut. Like, what could I use? And I started just creatively thinking. I was like, all right, I need a rope, or like one of those like hook things so I could throw it up and climb myself up. I was like, oh, better yet, I need like claws that I can put on and like kind of like claw out of the hole in my head. And I thought, okay, that's what I need. I need these claws. They're going to stick on my hands and they're going to be there, and I'm going to hang them on my wall. And when I fall in the rut, I'll be like, I got my claws.
The tools.
I'm good. I got my tools. Like, this is awesome. So I was going to make my claws. And then I thought, well, what if I'm having this feeling? I know I'm not alone, for one. This is obviously a feeling we all have and artists have, and particularly Black and Indigenous artists and queer artists, like, and, you know, people, but, you know, I'm thinking about artists and saying like, how do they deal with this? Like, people who are pushed in so many ways in the margins of our society and, you know, through these layers of oppressions, like, how do we deal with the pressures of our resilience? Like, how do we stay strong? How do we pull ourselves out of our ruts? And so this was an artistic question. I was like, had an art idea, I was like, and how do I get other people to be involved in this? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to have a party and I'm going to invite all my artist friends and we're all going to make tools together. We're going to like come up with our tools that we need. Like, we all need different tools. My one friend's like, oh, I need a pair of track shoes so I can like outrun, like, anytime like some crazy people start saying stuff, I'm going to have my track shoes and be like out the door. Another person's like, I need a snuffer to put out gaslighting, and you know, like a little twisty one to like get into all the like nooks and crannies where people like really mess with your head. And so that was it. I was gonna have a party and have us like all kind of theme wise like make a bunch of tools, which I still kind of want to do. And then I expanded it. I was like, well, obviously it's hard to bring all these people into my house. And so I made a call. I actually created an open artists call and I put it out there on my social media to like see what tools would artists make. And so this was a way that I like creatively tried to think of like collaborating on a large scale. And I did it. I just put it on social media, which is an international audience. And there we go. I had, you know, people from all over the world writing in the proposals for the types of tools that they would make, like for their own like resilience. Right. And it's amazing. And now it's so cool. Now I did it. I caught a jury and we made a call, and I have a full like curated show of 35 international artists that are going to make these tools. Wow, and great. We'll be touring them to multiple museums in this next year. You know, so they'll also be, the first round of the show will be in my form and concept show. Oh, awesome. But that was one way. I was like, I want to collaborate with artists. I want to work with artists. I came up with this idea in my living room and then I put it out there. Yeah. And all of a sudden I have these artists that are working and we'll be collaborating together.
What I love about that is it's this removing of this mask and this wall that I feel like the art world has of sort of like, this internal strength that you have to have, and you have to know how to get it, and you have to know how to speak the language, and you have to know the right people, and you have to do everything right, and then you too can be that you can get into the system, the capitalist system that you're talking about. And what I love about that project is saying, hold up, people, I hear you. If you're not even awake, if you're not needing some tools, if you're not needing. So I love this idea of saying, like, let's get real and let's all come together and acknowledge that I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. I don't have all the answers. I'm trying to work. I'm hustling as much as anyone else, you know? And so I think there's it's a humbling thing that I feel like if we all could come together in that and share that vulnerability, it only can improve all of us in terms of our self-esteem or our attitude around our own work, to say, it doesn't have to be perfect right now, or I can do this. Yeah. I'm going to share this work. I'm going to tear my heart out and put it on a wall and realize that I'm not alone in this, you know?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that place where we are able to, that is really the truth as artists, when we are absolutely true to ourselves. And I think that was one of the things that Aggie said too, like when the question came, you know, what would you say to your grandchildren, or, you know, right now, or like what advice would you give? And it was, you know, a beautiful advice of like really staying true to yourself. And that is really true, like true to yourself in whatever state it is, like however we are, you know, showing up to that in community, showing up to that with each other, you know, and that knowing that we're not alone, because it really, it's the biggest lie around, that we're alone, that like we have to do it ourselves, and that if we don't do it ourselves, we're not successful or valid. Like that is the biggest lie around, and we need to stop it, right? And so that place where we are humanizing each other, when we're working together, when we allow even our most crazy creative ideas to be put into the general sphere, and that's it.
I mean, just to answer Colette's question too, I think having more conversation around the art. I feel like there's shows and openings. Openings are fun. There's a lot of people, but really taking the moment and the time to carve out opportunities for artist talks, which actually I'm totally intimidated by, so maybe not talks, but artist discussions, roundtables, you know, conversations, I think, around the work. You know, I that's for me. I'd like to go deeper and hear more and get to know the artist. Maybe that's what we learned from Aggie too, is that value of actually getting to know the artist. It's one thing to go to the show and see the work, but, you know, when you actually can grab the artist and sit and say, I like this, tell me more, or I like your show, tell me more about it. Don't we all just fall in love with the work and the artist? I mean, so I think finding more time for that would be really awesome. So you're smiling over there.
Yeah,
I know.
Well, I loved that. Thank you both. I'm still laughing at how you really don't like artist talks, but really look at you go.
I don't like talking about my art. How about that? Let's talk about your art.
I love your art.
Deanna is wondering if you could talk about activist art that involves the community. She's thinking of the BLM protest piece that you led at the Plaza intersection last year, which I think quite a lot of us were there for. How do you go about creating such work? What impact do you think it has on the people participating who are not artists, and on the community at large?
I love that. And it's actually it's interesting to think of that action as an art piece, because I never did. You know, that action happened very much spontaneously. For those of you who were there, you might not have known that too. Like, you know, I really showed up there to support the movement, to support Salman, who was organizing and had called me earlier and was like, I'm going to do this thing and hope you can show up. And I was like, yeah, I'll be there. I showed up with my stilts, because stilts and protests just go together. The bigger you can get, the bigger you can be seen. And then it was really just a moment that happened where I happened to have the bullhorn and my stilts on, and I just walked out in the middle of the street. I did talk to a few people. I walked around to a few key people that I knew I could trust, like you. And I was like, I'm going to do this thing. You know, when it happens, you know what's happening, and I need some people to like watch out and support what's going on. So, you know, 4 or 5 people I just told, and so it happened in that moment. And I have to say, you know, it was definitely a powerful experience for me to lead that. and it was not, again, completely like my own idea. That there had been a lay-in, there's been die-ins forever, all for protest. There had been a big lay-in that happened in Portland, my hometown, I think a few days before. And so when I got out there, it was just like, this is what has to happen. We have to get our bodies in this. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that it connects to, like with activism for me, is that, you can be a great armchair activist, from your Instagram, social media, and follow all the right people and do all the right ons and the exclamation points and all the, anger face emojis, that you want about bad things that are happening. But it really only goes so far, because there's no sacrifice. Like there's no skin, like no body in the action of it. Right. And I think that, for me as an artist, that's essential to my work, is that my body, like I am physically invested in the work, I'm spiritually invested, I'm psychologically and emotionally invested in everything that I'm doing, and I'm giving all I can to it. And we have to do that with activism too. Like it's not enough to show up to activism and, sort of do it because you feel bad about what's happening. Like, it's not, I feel bad this is happening to someone else. I'm really fighting for this other person, or I'm fighting for this cause. All of that is this othering. Like we can't show up to activism unless we're fighting for ourselves. Like you are showing up because you can't live another day with that injustice existing in the world. Like you can't breathe another breath because this person's breath was taken from them. Like that's why you show up to activism. It's not because you're trying to help somebody or help a cause. And I think that's the piece that, with having people lay down on the ground, face down and feel the pain of the dirt and hear the cars honking and the danger and all of it, and hear my cries, and actually be there. And it does something different. It changes it viscerally. It becomes about them. It becomes for a moment about the fact that they are in danger, that they are vulnerable, that they are hurting. And as soon as you feel that in yourself, you feel your own body's danger, then there's the potential that you might actually make true action. But otherwise it doesn't work. Otherwise it's just like sitting in a chair and sending emojis, even as good as it seems like it is.
Right. Embodied,
the active embodied activism, and also embodied art. Like when you are really investing your whole self and your whole vision without apology into it, that's when it begins to really move.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is an art action in many ways. I know you didn't initially see it as such, but it does, and that's what I love about this sort of art and activism, and that. And then we talked a little bit about creativity and imagining a possible future. Is there really is? It's all together. It's all together in how we express our voices and show points of perspectives that we're concerned with that are not right. We are artists in that expression, right? It's expression, really. When I think about art and expression. Any more questions? No, we're wrapping it up. Nikesha, is there any other thoughts that as we close our conversation?
I guess I want to say, it's really easy also, again, there's this pattern of othering. It's easy to look at a movie like Aggie and look at somebody who has so much money and so much privilege and power in all these different ways and be like, okay, well, they can give something. They have it to give, but I really don't have it to give. I'm, struggling myself. How do I actually support these things? And I think that's a really important place, because there's really always a way. Right. And how do we get creative as artists and as activists to look at the ways that our own individual lives can always be giving, can always be supporting, even if it's just having conversations about art, having conversations about activism, doing our due diligence and our research, but also how do we, supporting causes that we really care about, that actually matter, in small ways. And I guess I want to just say is that there are that it is our responsibility as individuals to get better. All of us. I think that as a society we've gotten relatively lazy in so many ways, and the great capitalist system wants us to be that way. We actually have to challenge ourselves and get more creative about the ways that we can utilize even the smallest amounts of privileges that we might have to create change. So whatever it is that you have, like whatever bit, like I was given a solo show in a museum, not museum, but in a huge gallery, my first solo show. And right away, I carve out a huge space of it to give it to 35 international Black artists to talk about resilience. Like, I had this privilege, this space, and this moment, and I'm even then like giving it, right? And my sister is an activist in Portland, Oregon, and she was talking about they're doing this big thing where they're trying to fill all of these food pantries for houseless folks, and they're with a crew of people, and one person's like, we don't have any more food, we need like an extra a couple 100 pounds of this and that, and a few people were like, oh, I got my food stamps, and so they were using their food stamps to buy food for people who had less. Like the realities of like the ways that even whatever the small amount you have, the privilege you have, is actually potential that can be given, be creatively resourced. And so I think that there's really no excuse for anybody to not engage in some form of artistic activism in their lives, and I challenge you to find those creative ways to support it.
We are the change we wish to see in the world. Yes. I love that. Thank you, Nikesha, so much. This has been so fun. And thank you, everyone, for listening in. Please check out tcataus.org for the films. There's those 3 films. There's 2 other great films to dive into. And thanks for listening. And thank you, everyone. I guess you just end.
Applause in the room.
Thank you, Matt.
And thanks to all the folks who tuned in online. We had a great chat.
Yay.
Bye.